took to Faye for a while, and then I went round to my thing, and he was taking another call, which would have been his third. Order. The House and Committee on the Mixed Ownership Model Bill is resumed. Members, before the dinner break, the committee was debating Part 1, and the Honourable Trevor Mallard has the call. Here's a little over 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before the dinner break, I was speaking on my amendment, which is set out on Supplementary Order Paper 65, and the objective of it is, within clause 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 and 11 of this part, with 4, 5, 6, it is the intention to delete Genesis Energy, or now known as Genesis Power Limited, from this piece of legislation. And the point that I was making earlier, and it's something that I'm sure the Leader of the House is aware of from his previous responsibilities, Genesis is really the Crown's dirty energy company. It has the Huntly power station. It is one which I think it's fair to say over the 1990s, and one could say even into the 2000s, had a focus more on non-renewables than was desirable, and it was the one that had the furthest to go. And I know there's been some asset swapping around the place with the intention of getting more energy for Genesis in the South Island, but that is not something which, from my perspective, means that this company is one which should be allowed to go out into the private sector and to take its relatively dirty methods further out into the commercial world. And I was also associating that, Mr. Chairman, with the SOE from my colleague, the intention of which is to take solid energy out. And I want to try and link these 2 points, which my colleagues, I'm sure, will speak to going forward. Mr. Speaker, I was for a period of time the Minister of SOEs. I think for three years. I think when I got my punishment at one stage and had a number of portfolios which I liked taken off me, including the Sport and Rugby World Cup. I note my colleague smiling there. I was left with SOEs because, like the environment and labour, it was seen as a punishment. And dealing with solid energy, I think was one of the things which was one of the harder jobs. But there were some really big decisions. And one of the decisions which I know my colleagues in the Greens disagreed with, but I think was something was really important, was the purchase of the lignite, the farms with the lignite under them in Southland. My view is that there is a pretty clear choice there around the ownership of those, and should it be, Mr. Chairman?
Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Chairman, there's a pretty clear choice there, and that is whether we should have a state-owned enterprise involved in whatever development happens, and whether the government should have influence over that as an owner as well as a regulator. And my view has always been that at some stage in the future, the energy that is there will be the methods developed in order for it to be used in an environmentally sustainable way. It might be 20 years away, it might be 40 years away, but if we left it to the private sector, and if it is privatised in this way, what will happen, it will be done on a strictly commercial basis, and it will be mined very, very soon, and it will be burned in pellets, and it will be outrageous. So we have some choices to make, and I disagree with both sides of the House. The Greens say leave it to the private sector to own it and to use it, and the National Party says sell it to the private sector and let them use it. I disagree with both of them. What I wanted to see was us get to the point us get to the point where that energy can be taken out, where the emissions can be held underground. And there's a number of loose heads in the green shaking around. There's a number of loose heads flapping. But, Mr. Speaker, it is something that may be able to be done in the future, but if we don't own it, our ability to control it is removed only to the basis of our regulatory ability. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, that is something that is pretty hard. That's what my amendment's about. That's what my colleagues' amendment's about. It is about the role of the state in the energy companies, and my view is that it is a role that goes well beyond the role of the regulator. Mr. Speaker, the other point that I now want to make is that there is on the table a group of amendments which are what I would describe as fundamental or substantive, really big amendments from the Labour Party. They have to do with the Ombudsman, they have to do with individual companies, they have to do with treaty issues, there are lots and lots of issues there. They are what I call substantive. But, sir, I want to say that the member in charge of this bill has done a shocking job on the drafting. A shocking job on the drafting of this bill. I think the Attorney-General should be talking to Mr Ryle and trying to get this bill. Mr English, whose name's the bill in? He should be talking to Mr Ryle and getting him sorting out of the drafting. Mr Chairman, the Labour Party has found hundreds of drafting errors in this bill. There are hundreds of drafting errors, bad English which is not plain, things which create doubt. And Mr Speaker, and while it's not, we've got mixed feelings on this. Should we help the government tidy its legislation up or not by moving a number of amendments to clarify the purpose and to make it clear, or should we leave them to stew in their own bad drafting? Well, I'm Mr. Chairman, I'm a parliamentarian. A parliamentarian first. I'm not, some of these amendments are clearly matters of policy difference and very big policy difference. But as a parliamentarian, I cannot let legislation go through the House. I cannot let legislation go through the House which is so badly drafted and around which the government is so disorganised. So, Mr. Chairman, it's the reverse of the normal saying. It's the reverse. It's normally, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. But in this particular case, we are here from the opposition, and we're here to help. And that is why, Mr. Chairman, my colleague Chris Hipkins has, on behalf of the Labour Party, tabled a number of amendments. I think I'd take some care at letting one clerk carry them. Mr. Chairman, there are copies of each of them there. We are doing that in order to make clear to the government that it is important, not only as a matter of principle, but, Mr. Chairman, as a matter of proper parliamentary drafting.
Alfred Naro.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the question be now put.
Brendan Horan.